Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about this bass. So before we get into this weird and wonderful Yamaha bass, we need to talk about the real reason why I looked for an instrument like this, and why this one actually ended up becoming the perfect instrument that I'll probably never part with. And that's the song Cassette Futurism. You see, Cassette Futurism was written originally with only one bass part, and I'll show you what I used. It was originally recorded on this bass here. Now, some of you might have seen this bass recently in the tuning video, where I talked about the fact this is tuned ADGC. They'll be linked below or something like that if you want to see it. And because of that tuning, I used it flat, like a lap steel, with a slide, and played the melodic part in the chorus of Cassette Futurism on this bass. Problem is, I never finished the song at that point. And when it did come to actually finishing the song, I added a second bass part in the verse. It's really that fuzz bass part in the verse was done on a different bass. It was done on my Harley Benton jazz bass that was fretless. The one you've probably seen in other videos in the past if you've been following this channel. So it was a combination of two basses, one tuned A to C and using that high C, and one tuned EADG using the low E. So the problem was, how do I play this live? And I did think about having this through its own rig laid flat, and using the other bass played normal, and then having to mute it, go to this one, play this one laid flat, then mute this one and go back to the other one. It was going to be a bit difficult, but that was what we were going to roll with. And then one night, while doom scrolling on Reverb, which is much better and much more dangerous than doom scrolling on Instagram, I'll just add that, I came across this. It was in England. It's an 80s Yamaha BX5. But it's not a normal Yamaha BX5. You see, this one had been defretted, likely at the bass gallery, who I'll put a photograph in of their logo on the back of the non-existent headstock. And this bass really caught my attention. One, because it was fretless, and I'm a sucker for any quirky but affordable fretless basses that come up on the internet. Obviously the shape of this, I mean, look at it, was hard to ignore. And yeah, with the fact the song was called Cassette Futurism, it's about that 80s nostalgia and the fact that even though it was set in the future, it still looked retro. I mean, is there a more perfect bass for that theming? So I thought to myself, well, it's a 5-string. And it was actually tuned B-E-A-D-G. It was a traditional 5-string when I bought it. But the nut slots were actually quite narrow. So I bought this thing, which included the most quirky hard case I've ever seen. I'll try and include a photograph of that somewhere as well. And when this thing arrived, I took it to the tech in the local music shop, Rainbow Music, and their tech basically gave it a full setup. We changed it over to EADGC, so it's now got a 45 to 105 D'Addario set on the normal strings, and then it's got a 32 gauge high C string. When it arrived, this plate wasn't there. It had a big hole where there's clearly an XLR had been fitted, so that got covered up with a proper jack plate, and only the bridge pickup was wired in, which we then discovered when we took it apart to try and rewire it all. One of the pickups is actually, the bridge pickup, is actually a replacement pickup made by Kent Armstrong. It was a handmade pickup made by Ken Armstrong's company to replace whatever had gone wrong with the existing one. So it's actually got a pretty rare pickup inside there as well. It's not a stock pickup, it's a handmade pickup from Ken Armstrong's son, which is pretty cool. But the thing is, I'm not actually using that pickup just now, because I'm using only the neck pickup. The neck pickup has become my go-to thing on all my basses for the fretless within my setup. I just really like the almost P-bass thing that you can get from running a solo neck pickup. So I'm only using the one that's the stock one, but I've got a pretty cool one in the bridge. This bass has been a lot of fun to work with. It has been a learning curve. There's a few things that are a bit quirky about it. For example, slap on this, because you don't have a body, just feels a little bit obscure. It's not the most comfortable technique on this bass. It does feel small when you're playing, which when you're a big lad like me isn't always the best. And it actually is a pretty steep learning curve not having the weight of a headstock. It's almost like it's an anti-gravity bass, where you have to really think about anchoring it down. It feels a bit different. But when you do get comfortable with it, when you get used to it, it's actually an incredibly nice bass. Really well made, sounds great. And that's not just because of the Ken Armstrong modification. The neck pickup, which is stock, sounds incredible on this. The neck's very comfortable. And the big addition, the big improvement is, look at the fret access up here. I can now actually play Cassette Futurism without having to have the bass flat. I've got that fret access where I can actually get to the highest frets without having to lay the bass flat. So this has actually become the perfect bass for playing that song and a few others in the set. So while the Cort is definitely still the number one, this is definitely the number two now. It's a really nice bass. I really can't recommend these enough if you're into the quirky, weird stuff. The BX5 or the BX1 if you're using the 4-string version, which actually Nathan East used one of those at Live Aid with Kenny Loggins. So it's actually quite a famous shape from that point of view. So I highly recommend checking these out if you get a chance. They're a lot of fun to play. They'll look cool, let's be honest. Well, you maybe hate it, but they're very polarising, let's just put it that way. And I love mine. So we'll leave it at that for today. I'll cut in some footage of me using this bass live at the end. I'll put it in from the album launch gig. In fact, let's go with Cassette Futurism, seeing as that's the song we're talking about. So we'll leave it at that for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any questions about this bass or anything else to do with what I'm posting here, leave it in the comments. I'd love to chat with you. If you want to support what I do, please click subscribe, like, notification buttons and all that stuff everyone asks for, because it does help. It really, really does. If you want to support what I'm doing with my music, I'll have my music on here linked below, but also my Bandcamp, where you can get the whole back catalogue. It is on streaming and such as well. All of that Bandcamp and streaming under Gavin Forrest Music. If you want to stay up to date with gigs and anything I'm working on, Instagram and Facebook, Gavin Forrest Music as well. So until next time, thank you very much for watching and keep working on those bass faces.